This is an admittedly odd little episode about tribes, belonging, support, feedback, inspiration, and propaganda. A few years ago, I read a book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and it was fascinating. It was really, really interesting. I read it because it was recommended by someone else. It's not a book I would have picked up. It talks a lot about benefits of working together as a collective, working collectively together as opposed to individually, and that we thrive. As human beings, we thrive when we work together. And in highly developed, let's say developed, economically developed areas of the world, where we don't need each other's support and help as much because we can take care of ourselves individually, we tend to focus more on our individual needs and our individual lives. And Junger links that to a rise in mental illnesses. So in contrast, he gives some examples of what happens during times of war when people are suffering. When they band together and rely on each other, they need to for food, for safety, to make each other laugh, even to make it through those difficult times. Once the wars are over, they return to their more individual lives and have what they need to survive on their own. The thing that people miss is a sense of dependence, reliance, belonging, and connection with other people that they needed to get through those difficult times. So there's that idea of a tribe. It's very compelling. And then I contrast that with, I do some astrology, archetype-based business consulting. And I'm an Aquarius with a bunch of other things apparently in my chart. I don't understand any of this stuff, and I'm not even trying to distance myself from it. Part of me, the old me, would have said, oh God, Sarah, really? Like astrological archetypes? What are you doing? But I'm trying to keep a more open mind to things and find inspiration where I can. So I find it fascinating when I meet with my advisor who talks to me about what it means to be an Aquarius and various other things in my chart. Everything in my chart is about striking out on my own, being bold, being terrified of being in a group, actually. There's a lot in apparently my background of fear of being in a group because of some big calamity in the past where I joined a group wholeheartedly and didn't question it and went down a very dark road. Things went very badly for myself and for everybody, and I was part of the cause of that. So apparently that is part of the reason why I am really scared of being swept up in a group and thinking like everybody else in the group. And part of that is just my stubbornness of not wanting to think like everybody else. So contrast the lessons from Tribe with my own sort of personal nature of being scared of tribes. I'm trying to find some balance because I can see how many benefits there are to being part of a group. And one of them is just having trust in others. So you build relationships of trust with other people, and that trust can give us some of the support that we need to do some things that might scare us. Support can come in other forms. People can provide resources. They share resources. They share ideas. They share all kinds of things that we might need in the moment that we don't have in ourselves to be able to achieve different things. And Amanda Palmer wrote a great book called The Art of Asking. She asks for everything that she needs. She just puts it out there and allows people to help her with the things that she needs in the moment. So when she travels, when she tours, she's a musician, she asks for places to stay during the tour, and people offer her places to stay when she needs them. You can get wonderful feedback from others, also based on that idea of trust, I think, where you can put work out or thoughts out to people in your tribe that you may not be ready to put out to a wider audience, and get great feedback on how you can improve what you're doing. And maybe one other thing you can get from a tribe, although not just from a tribe, is inspiration. So you get to know what people are doing and working on and achieving, and what their challenges are and how they overcome them. And that can be extremely inspiring. And you can get that inspiration from outside your tribe as well, obviously, but you can get it maybe at a degree of greater detail, because you can ask questions and you can learn more and maybe see more into processes and learn so much from that. So those are great things that we get from being in a tribe. I have a natural terror of being in a tribe. And that just took me, when I was thinking about this, that took me off on a whole other tangent about propaganda. Just trying to uncover, I was like, why am I scared? By total accident, I was looking for a different book in the library, and I happened to come across a book called How to Win an Information War. It was the story of Sefton Delmer during the Second World War. He worked for British intelligence, and he put out propaganda in Germany to combat the German propaganda being put out by Hitler and Goebbels. His propaganda was more successful. It's so interesting. His propaganda was more successful because the Nazis were really just trying to tell people what to think. And a lot of it was lies. So they would tell a lot of lies, and they would convince people to think a certain way and feel a certain way and do certain things because of lies that they told them. And Sefton Delmer realized that the best way to combat that was not with facts. So you don't try to change. Once people have a certain worldview or believe something is true and something is false, you can't just convince them with facts that that's not the case. People hold on to their beliefs. That's another scary thing. I put myself in the same group. We hold on to our ideas, and it's very hard to disprove them once we have them locked in. And Sefton Delmer realized you can't just give people facts to convince them of something otherwise. You have to appeal to their interests. You have to appeal in some way to what they already think they know or what they believe. And then you can use lies. And he came under quite a bit of fire for this, I think, after World War II, but it was effective. It's very subtle, but he used lies to help encourage people to search for the truth. So he would do things like, he would sort of imitate German radio stations. He would have somebody come on and do a news report, and then at the end there would be a part about how certain high-ranking Nazi officials, and he'd name them, had thrown huge parties and had wonderful meals and had musicians and all of these things at a time when the German people were starving, were really suffering in the second half of the war. And so people were appalled and they were angry, and so they would try to find out if it was really true, and a lot of time it wasn't true. But in investigating whether it was really true, the people would find out other things about the Nazi officials and what they were doing and their strategies for the war that did make them question support they may have for that war. So to circle back, I think this is one of the more, it's funny because I actually took notes for this, but then confused myself maybe a bit in the circling around of the various ideas. But if I go back and just sort of try to summarize, the book by Sebastian Junger called Tribe really emphasizes the value of working collectively for humans to thrive. And it's really compelling. I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed that book. And some of the benefits of tribes are a sense of belonging, support, feedback, inspiration, and then balancing that with a fear of propaganda or being convinced to think a certain way that may not be true. And I have one more story about this. This is a bit of a crazy one, but I started listening to some Joe Rogan podcasts exactly because I had thought, oh, he's a bit right-wing and I won't agree with anything that he says, which is actually the point, right? So I was encouraged to listen to a few podcasts and, of course, realized I was being an idiot because he's a really good interviewer. He researches a lot, even if I don't share a lot of the same ideas as him. I really respect how he speaks with his guests and questions ideas a lot. He really questions them a lot. So to the point where I was listening to an interview with a man who believes that the lunar landing, the American moon landing in 1969 was a hoax. And immediately my bells went off and I thought, this guy's a lunatic. Like, of course they landed on the moon. And I still believe that the Americans did land on the moon. But he raised a lot of really interesting points, and so did Joe Rogan. And the American government in the 60s apparently was pulling a lot of fast ones and did tell a lot of lies that have subsequently been shown to be true. And I don't want to go into that because I don't have any depth of knowledge in that, but I can believe it's true. And so that whole episode made me just question why I believe some things so strongly. I think it's a really good idea to question ourselves sometimes, and maybe those things, they may or may not be true. And what's really true anyway, it's not the point, but how do I want to live my life? What are the principles I want to live by? And so I know I need to balance my individual need to believe that I'm living my life by certain principles and certain beliefs that I think are right, feel right, which is scary, versus what I need from a tribe, my sense of belonging, and my sense of support. And some of that support comes in the sense of shared beliefs and principles. And so I give up some of my individual need in a way. I allow other people to decide for me what to believe. I don't know if any of this is going to resonate at all. I just got to a place I didn't expect to. What I really wanted to do was talk about tribe as support and feedback for artists and others. But I think it's about independent thinking, and it's about getting support, and it's about getting feedback, and it's about thriving. And I would really, really appreciate some feedback, some responses to this, some ideas about what tribes mean to you. Do you belong to tribes? Do you want to belong to tribes? Do you need a tribe? Do you go it alone? Nobody really goes it alone. But where do you fall on the whole idea of tribes? I would love to hear from you and learn from what you think. Thank you, as always, for listening.